Good evening. We are very happy to welcome Dr. Leslie Desmangles to the Sara show, and he's going to tell us a little bit about himself. Dr. Desmangles, tell me about you.
Well, I was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and then after that, at the very, very early age, at 13, I was sent to study in Canada. So I was in a boarding school in Canada, then came to the United States in 1960 and did my college and graduate degrees, both degrees here.
So why did you leave Canada to come to the United States?
I don't know. I mean, it was my father's choice. He was paying for my education, and he thought that perhaps I would get a better education in the U.S.
Okay, I'm curious to know, you have a BA in music, your master's in divinity.
Yes.
And then your Ph.D. in anthropology.
Anthropology of Religion, yes.
Yeah. Which subjects do you like the most?
Well, anthropology of religion, obviously I would be biased. But my work in anthropology of religion has been in the Caribbean, but also in West Africa. So I've written about both West Africa and the Caribbean and the connections between the two.
Yes. What about voodoo?
Yeah, I wrote a book on voodoo, and I did a lot of work on that. But you know, voodoo is not what most people think it is. It has nothing to do with sticking pins in dolls. It really is a religion which, in a sense, provides some sense of meaning for people. This is the important aspect of the religion. And so, but it's gotten a bad name in the past, which is really unfortunate. But it has nothing to do with zombies. It has nothing to do with pins and dolls. So I was very interested at a very young age with it, although I don't practice it, and my parents don't either. In fact, my parents were very strong Baptists, but I decided that I was going to do that because primarily few books had been written about it, and I wanted to find out more about it. And I found it rather fascinating, and that's the reason why I studied it and did research on it. But since I'm in Caribbean studies, I have not only studied voodoo, but I've studied other religions throughout the Caribbean as well.
What are they?
Well, I did some work on candomblé in Brazil, and then also about the Rastafarian in Jamaica. In fact, I just finished a piece on the Rastas, which is going to come out, Oxford University Press.
Wow, very impressive.
And I've written about Vodou in other cases, but my book actually came out some years ago on Haitian Voodoo.
And what was the title of it?
The title is God in Haitian Voodoo, and its subtitle, Vodou and Roman Catholicism. Actually, the title is The Faces of the Gods. The Faces of the Gods, and its subtitle, Vodou and Roman Catholicism in Haiti, published by the University of North Carolina Press.
Yeah. Why do you think voodoo has a bad name? Is that because of the many gods versus the Catholic religion?
No, that's not the reason. It's not the reason. The reason is because people who came to Haiti just didn't understand the religion. And the other, I have to say this, but it is a form of racism. I mean, during the time of the American occupation of Haiti, which would be between 1915 and 1934, there was something that a lot of the Marines who occupied the country thought was very mystical about the religion. And they created that image because they just simply imagined what it might have been. And they connected it to blackness. And that was part, and during that period also there were a lot of books that were published about voodoo, which was really part of the imagination about zombies, about cannibalism and this sort of thing, which has nothing to do with religion. And so in the end, a lot of these books became very popular, and they were turned into movies in the 1930s. And this would have been the time, of course, in the midst of the Depression. So a lot of people would go to the movies in New York, save about 1 cent or 2 cents at the door. And they delighted themselves with looking at things that were just sheer products of imagination.
But you did say that voodoo has nothing to do with zombification, but there were studies done by some Harvard professors about people turning into zombies in Haiti. How do you explain that?
Well, I have had some problems with Wade Davis, that's his name, who's written that book. He and I think I know him, and we've talked about this. The problem that I have is primarily with his research and what he has done in his research. And he went to Haiti to do the work, and he never really learned the language, and he had to rely on people and then paid them for information.
Okay.
Now, I'm an anthropologist and do field research. That's the last thing I would ever do, is paying people for information. From what he told me, he gave one person $4,000.
Wow.
And that was a very poor person who lived up on the mountain, and it's almost like a peasant who received suddenly $4,000. And that was some years ago. It probably would be worth much less now, but he would have to pay more now than he did then. And I would never do that by doing research, and giving money for information. So he and I have discussed this. In fact, I remember at one point, we were in Millersville, Pennsylvania, and we had a discussion about this until well into 2 o'clock in the morning at the hotel, because he and I were at a conference together. And so it never came to anything because he didn't agree with me, but it doesn't matter. We did have this conversation about it.
Yes.
So I disagreed with him on that.
Now you have taught at Trinity College for
Yes.
how many years?
Well, I taught at Trinity for 40 years and
For
retired.
40 years, wow.
Came in 1978 and retired in 2018.
What inspired you to become a college professor?
I had a professor in divinity school who taught systematic theology. And he was a very eloquent, very articulate man. And I mean, he kept us really concentrating and quite interested in what he was doing. But I liked his style. I liked his way in which he taught. And I could see myself doing it, teaching that way. And so I decided that this would not be a bad idea. So I went to Temple University, and where they had a burgeoning just program in Anthropology of Religion, which was just starting. In fact, the whole field, Anthropology of Religion, back in the late 60s and early 70s, was just a new field in anthropology. And there were very few people in it. I could only count about 5 or 6. So I came along, and they already had that program at Temple, and it attracted me. And that's the reason why I did that.
You're very well educated. You have studied many topics. I would be very interested to sit in one of your classes. How would one of your students describe?
Well, you would have to ask them. I have no idea what they would think of me. It all depends. I think some of them would think that I'm a dud. Others would think perhaps that I'm probably the most eloquent professor there is. I have no idea. But in any case, now I've enjoyed teaching in all these years that I've been at Trinity. And I love teaching, and I miss it a lot.
What have you learned about yourself being a teacher, a college professor?
Well, perhaps a hunger for learning. Because if you're going to teach, you really have to keep up with the field. You have to read. And sometimes by reading something, it connects with other fields of study. And I've learned a tremendous amount the past 40 years, not only about my own field, but also about others as well, about other fields and other areas of anthropology that I did not know. So I've gained a lot of knowledge about these other fields as well. So this has been very rewarding.
Yes. Now that you have retired, what do you do during free time?
Well, I'm teaching one course part-time, which I enjoy. Actually, I'm teaching one course at the University of Hartford, only once a week.
Okay.
So that's what I've been doing. And then I continue to do a lot of reading, and I'm still writing and publishing, and still doing research. So as long as I'm able to do it in my old age.
I mean, what are the characteristics that, let's say there is somebody watching now doesn't know whether or not she or he should become a professor. What are the characteristics that one needs to become a good professor?
Oh, that you have to have a very keen interest in research. And also a desire to communicate, and therefore to be articulate, and then to communicate with others what you've learned. To me, that's very important. But the key thing is really research, is to be curious. And I tell this to my students, I want them to be curious. And that's the most important quality, I think. that has to do with teaching.
Yes, being an anthropologist probably has helped you because when you have immigrants coming to your classes, some of them, their English is not perfect. And how do you deal with that to make sure that they keep up to par with the rest
Make
of the
them feel
students?
comfortable.
Yeah, welcome.
And I can communicate with them with their culture, depending on where they're coming from. If they're coming from the Caribbean, and I have a good many Caribbean students, and also African students, so that I can communicate them and talk about their culture, and then make them feel comfortable to learn. And I also know enough about their culture to be able to make them comfortable about living in this country, which is in some cases so different from what they've known at home.
Yes, because also you have been very involved at church, helping people from different countries, like refugees.
Yes, I have been working with refugees, which is one of the things that occupies my time. I've been working with refugee families. It means, again, it's to make them feel comfortable in this country and also explain to them a lot of things about American society and American culture. And it comes down to things that most Americans don't think about. How do you do your taxes? And what deductions can you take? And so on. And this has been a very satisfying work. I mean, I'm not paid for it. This is not just, but I'm doing it because this is something that I had to go through as an immigrant myself. And so I can understand quite a bit, really, of some of the difficulties that they are having as well.
I mean, as an immigrant, being a student in the 1960s, or
Yes, 1960s.
that was during the time of Martin Luther King.
Yes, it would have been.
So, did you have any experience that you like to share with us, being a minority attending?
Well, as a person of color,
yes,
in the 1960s, yeah, there were a number of things that occurred, and of course, these were new to me because back where I'm coming from, we didn't experience anything of racism. And when I came to this country, it was a shock. I mean, I remember one occasion, I was just a student, and I was looking for an apartment. I was a graduate student. And I mean, it's a story that lots of people can tell. But I called because it was a telephone number, and the lady said, yes, you can come and see the apartment. So I took the bus, because I didn't have a car. And so I went over to the apartment, knocked at the door, and as soon as I arrived, I told her what my business was, that I wanted to see this apartment that I wanted to rent. And this was only maybe about 15 minutes to 20 minutes after my call. And she said, oh, no, she said, it's been rented. And I thought that was a little strange. She said that there was a man who had come in, liked the apartment, and rented it and had put a deposit on it. So I got back into my apartment where I was living, and I thought I would call her, and I asked her if I could see the apartment. And she said, yes, you can come over anytime. So I said, well, I was just there. Yeah, so these are the sorts of, in a way, I can look back and smile and laugh about this, but it wasn't funny at the time.
Yeah, I can
so
imagine.
this was something. The other experience that I had, I drove from Ohio down to Florida. So we had to cross Georgia. And I remember I was with two other people who were also graduate students. And I remember I was driving the car, and I remember when I got to Georgia, at least at the time, with everything that was going on in Georgia and the bombings and all of that in Atlanta, I just went and sat in the back seat, and I gave the seat to another driver who was white. But I was not going to sit in the front seat driving the car as a black person, driving the car with a white person next to me. So I went and sat in the back. And that was much easier for me. But I was just afraid. But I lived, in those days you sort of live with a fear that something could happen at any time, and you didn't know exactly what.
Okay.
And that was very stressful.
Did you experience the same thing in Canada?
No, I did not. No, not at all. Not at all. The whole time that I was there for 4 years, I walked through the city of Montreal. I lived not far from downtown, which is where the school was. And I've never had any problems at all. I was completely accepted wherever I went. Never had anything like that. That's why it was such a shock to me when I came to the United States.
Yeah, because in Haiti you would consider to be a mulatto.
I would, but I would not have those kinds of experiences.
Yes.
They never ran across, as a child, I never ran across that kind of racism, certainly, and it from my parents anyway.
Because you had a very privileged life, your father being a doctor. And
Yeah, my father was a doctor. He was an obstetrician.
yeah, I want to know the accomplishments. Which accomplishments that you're most proud of, throughout your career, either as a professor or philanthropist?
Well, let me give you an example. I had a student who was a pre-med, so she was not even in my own field, but she was an African-American student who had come from a very poor area in New York, and extremely poor area, and depressed as well. And she came to my office and she said, "Oh, Prof, I don't think I can do it. I can't do it. I can't be. I'll never be a doctor." And I remember putting my coat on. I said, "You put your coat on." And then we walked over to the cafeteria. And I went to get a cup of coffee. I put it in front of her, put a cup of coffee in front of me, and I sat right across from her, and I looked her straight in the eye, put my finger like this in her face, and I said, "I don't ever want to hear you say that ever again." And she graduated,
And
went
became a
on
doctor?
3 years ago.
Wow.
Now she called me last fall, and she is a medical student.
Wow, that's good.
So I was very, very pleased about that. So that's one of the things. So I think the most satisfaction that I've had has been that kind of success that I've seen students, and I know that I had a very small part of it. Maybe not a whole lot, but that. And the other, has been my book, the University of North Carolina Press, which has won prize,
Wow, congratulations.
and has been quoted quite extensively. So I'm very pleased about that.
Yeah. Who's your role model?
I don't know if I have one.
Your favorite writer, author?
Well, to me, it was Alfred Mitro, who's written about Haiti, and it's a big, wonderful book. Vodou in Haiti, it's just a wonderfully written book. The other person that I like, perhaps in the Caribbean, is a literary person, Aimé Césaire, who is in Martinique.
Okay.
Has written quite a bit about colonialism and also about the Francophone world. For me, he's a very prolific and a good thinker.
Okay. What's your favorite color?
I never thought about it. I think it's probably beige. I like beige.
Why?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I just, it's pleasing to me.
How would you like to be remembered?
I don't know.
Think about it.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Wow.
So I don't think about that either. I just
Okay.
go on to do what I got to do, and that's it. People will remember me the way they want to remember me. It might either be good or bad. So it depends.
If you had another chance, to live life again, would you change anything?
No. I think I chose the right thing to do when I finished seminary. I was ordained, and I decided that I was going to go to graduate school. And I never became a minister, and never had a church. But I'm glad that I did that I went that route, because I know quite a bit. I know something about theology and the work of being a minister of the church, although I haven't done it myself. But I know what it's like. But no, I would not change anything. I think I had some very good profs when I was in graduate school in particular, one of whom was the systematic theology prof, who was from Switzerland, and the other was Leonard Barrett, who was Jamaican at Temple University, who had a great influence on me.
Oh, that's good. Do you think being a minister helped you deal with the fact that one of your best friends is dying? You help so many people at the end of their lives.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I could become sensitive, and I hope I could become helpful to them too. So.
So